first thing that I gotta say is, obviously, for those of you that have been following this vlog, you know that I've been a diehard Vegas Golden Knights fan, and that goes back 2 years before the drop of the first puck. The minute it was announced that they were going to be a team in Vegas and that there would be hockey in Nevada, I had decided that I was no longer going to be a San Jose Sharks fan and that I would be all in on whatever that team would be. So it wasn't a case where I decided, oh, they're good, I'm going to be a fan now and I'm going to start paying attention now. That was not the case. So it's been pretty cool. Heartbreak in the Stanley Cup final, though. They ran into a better team in the Washington Capitals. And while they did run into a better team in that series, they were also the team that caught the most breaks and made fewer mistakes. You had mainly 2 games and 2 guys that killed the Golden Knights. You had Shea Theodore, who, by all accounts, looks like he's going to be a really good player for them for a number of years. He's a very young defenseman who can also score much better than most defensemen can. He had the moment of the year for the Golden Knights, arguably in the regular season, the game-winning goal against Tampa with 3 seconds to go in the game against the best team in the NHL at the time. But he just had the worst game of his life in Washington, and he turned the puck over in a critical moment and really did that twice. And then in Game 5, Lucas Spiza, kind of the same deal there for the Golden Knights. So you have some mistakes. But the one that I will always remember is the Golden Knights had a minute 9 worth of 5-on-3 play in Game 2 at home. They were down a goal in the third. There's about 10 minutes to go, maybe a little bit more, and they did not score. Now, there's no official stat, of course, on how often teams score on a 5-on-3 because the length of time always differs for how long you have the 5-on-3. So I'm not sure what the exact number would be, but for a minute 9 at home with a 5-on-3, that is supposed to be an automatic goal. And to not get one and not even get too many great shots is inexcusable. And then, of course, after that came the save, as it'll be known by the Capitals fans, and rightfully so. If I were a Capitals fan, I'd be looking at that as one of the truly great moments in sports, too. But the fact of the matter is, it was a really lucky play for Braden Holtby, who had a great series, but he just happened to reach out in the exact perfect spot to rob Alex Tuch. He wasn't even looking. He didn't know where the puck was going to be, and it just happened to be right there. So a number of things you could be talking about with this series, and I know a lot of people will say, well, the Golden Knights, they haven't paid their dues. They got to wait around. Yes, that could be true, but I mean, it could be 30 years before the Golden Knights ever get back to the Stanley Cup final. You just don't know in sports. So you got to take your opportunities when they get there. And unfortunately for Vegas, they missed out on this one. I will always remember, by the way, though, and shout out to this guy, whoever you are. I was sitting at a poker table at the Venetian back in late October, and the Golden Knights had gotten off to that hot start. I want to say they were like 8-2 at the time when I was there. And I'm wearing a Golden Knights hat, as I typically am. And this guy looks over at me, who I'd never seen before, and he says a couple of things about the team, and I say a few things back, talking about how exciting it was. And he looks at me and he says, "Could you imagine if they just went ahead and won the cup?" And for some reason, that always stuck with me. This random guy who I had never even met before saying that to me back in October. I thought about it all year, and sure enough, they kept getting closer and closer to that goal, and I said, oh my God, this guy's right, it's going to happen. It almost happened, but it didn't quite happen. Speaking of Las Vegas, I've gotten a number of comments in, including one that I'll put up on the screen right now from the last vlog, asking if I will be going to the World Series of Poker. And I can actually tell you kind of a funny story about that. And this is going to be my second sports-related thing here to start this vlog. I became somewhat superstitious with the World Series of Poker, and I am the least superstitious guy you'll ever meet. But my first ever time playing in the WSOP, and I'll show you a picture of that, was in 2010. And I'd only been playing poker for about a year and a half at the time, and finally starting to turn a win rate. And my buddy and I went down and we played in one of the no limit events. And I remember playing all day long and starting at noon and playing till about 2 in the morning before finally busting. Actually, I believe it was pretty close to the money, but didn't end up cashing. My San Francisco Giants went on to win the World Series that year. The next year, of course, was 2011, and I was going to go play in the World Series of Poker again, but I didn't end up doing it. So I missed out that year. Giants missed the playoffs. Well, I went and played the World Series of Poker again the following year in 2012. I actually remember getting it all in a pretty good stack size with Ace-King against King 10 on a King-High flop. And of course, the river was a 10, so I got knocked out. But the Giants didn't get knocked out. They went on to win the World Series again in 2012. 2013, same thing. I didn't play in the World Series of Poker. 2014, I played in the World Series of Poker. Still didn't cash. But you know where this is going. Giants won the World Series of Baseball again. So after that point, I'm like, my God, this superstition is crazy. How is this every time I play in the World Series of Poker, the Giants win the World Series of Baseball? Well, as you may or may not already have guessed, I've had very little luck in tournaments. I have one cash on my Hendon Mob that came at a heads-up event at the Peppermill in 2015. And if there's ever a heads-up event again, not just because I cashed, but because I feel very comfortable playing heads-up against anyone, I will be in there. I finished second in that event. It was best of 2 out of 3 all the way, so I swept the first 3 rounds without even losing a round, and then in the finals, we ended up splitting the first 2, and then I lost in the 3rd round on a coin flip, pocket 7s against King Queen for basically the entire thing. So that's my only tournament cash. But I've never had any luck in tournaments, so I went to play in 2016 again, simply because of this superstition. I can't believe I actually did that, but I did. Sure enough, the Giants got into the playoffs that year before losing a heartbreaker to the Cubs, who went on to win the whole thing. So my streak was snapped then. Those even-numbered years. We're back here at another even-numbered year, and it does call into question, should I go and play? And the answer for me this year is going to be no. I do love that feel of being in Vegas during the World Series of Poker. It's like nothing else, with all the cash games and all the tournaments and everyone in town. It is great. With my work situation right now, in the midst of a transition, I don't want to be taking much time off. I will admit, I had thoughts of going down, though, should the Golden Knights have won this thing, and if there was a parade on Las Vegas Boulevard, which now we know is not going to happen. But if that was going to have happened, I was not going to miss that. I was going to be there for that no matter what. But as it turns out now, it's not going to happen. So I'm probably not going to be down in Vegas for the World Series of Poker as of now. One good thing about the World Series of Poker, too, and this applies to pretty much any of you living in the United States, is that I can pretty much guarantee you that the games where you normally play will be better during the World Series of Poker than they normally are. And then you don't have to pay for travel, you don't have to pay for rooms, you don't have to pay for food on the road, you have to pay for gas, you don't have to fight crowds, you just stay and play where you normally are playing, and the better players are in Vegas, and the guys who are good for the game and have jobs, well, they're still there. So that's kind of the case in Reno. The games are typically much better here than they are normally. So it's kind of a win-win when you don't go to the World Series of Poker. So as of now, this is a very roundabout way of saying I'm not going this year. I'll definitely go again at some point. I really want to vlog during the World Series of Poker. But as of this year, not going to be the case. Reno City Hall this morning, taping this the day after primary elections here in northern Nevada, all of Nevada really. And we had a pretty close race on the Democratic side for governor. That was won by Steve Sisolak, and he'll face off against Adam Laxalt in November. I actually had a funny story. The Vegas Golden Knights had just won Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. Sadly, that was the only game they won in that series. But the day after that, I shot a story that involved this Sisolak, And him and I spent 5 minutes breaking down game one of the finals. Just me and him talking hockey. And he knows his stuff. So thought that was pretty cool there. Speaking of the news business, happy to point out that I have indeed been given the weekend anchor job at Colo 8. So this will be my last time coming to you on the morning shift. Won't be waking up at 2:30 anymore, which I must say I'm looking forward to. I will be working night side, basically 2:30 to 11:30 on Saturday and Sunday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday during the day. Midweek 3-5 here at the Atlantis, and a couple of interesting hands to point out. The first one came when we had a $20 raise over a limp from the hijack, and I'm in the big blind with ace-8 of spades. I make the call, and the limper calls as well. So 60 in the pot, and we see a flop of ace-8-9 with 2 hearts. So I flop top and bottom pair. I check, the limper checks, and the hijack bets 35. I check raise to 100, and after much deliberation, the limper makes the call. It's back around to the original raiser and the hijack. He thinks about it for quite some time before shoving all in.
I'm all in.
For a total of about 600. And this is a player who I've played with a decent amount and generally plays pretty tight. I would not expect him to make this move with ace-king, because what is he going to then get called with? I thought about it for a while and definitely thought that he could have pocket nines. I thought maybe he'd get frisky and make the move with jack-10 of hearts, but then I'm still in a position where I have to fade a million outs. I really was unsure. I also have the fact that the other player in the hand could potentially be slow playing something. So finally I decided on a fold. The limper ended up folding as well, so I didn't actually get to see. Be curious your thoughts on this. This is one of the guys who, about mid-60s, comes in, drinks coffee, reads the paper, doesn't play too many hands. One of those type of guys. What do you think about my lay down there with top and bottom pair? Be curious to hear. There's also a hand where we get an under the gun raise to 20, a field caller, and I'm on the button with 9-7 of spades. I make the call, and the flop comes out ace, jack 10, all spades. The original raiser in early position checks it, and the field caller, 2 to his left, bets 30. I'm definitely going to be putting in a raise here. Can definitely get called by a variety of weaker hands, obviously. So I make it 100. Probably could have gone a little more, but I decide on 100. The original raiser cold calls the 100, and the other guy makes the call as well. So 300 goes into the pot on the flop. The turn comes the 4 of spades, so it brings the 4th spade that I didn't want to see. Under the gun checks, and the player in MP1 ships all in for about 400 more. I think I have a pretty easy fold here. Definitely not the kind of guy who's going to be bluffing, and given his line on the flop, I definitely made him for a pair and a flush draw, and in this case probably a pair and the nut flush draw, which I believe he got there. So losing a couple of big pots there, but still ahead for the day because I keep picking off small pots that aren't interesting enough to waste any of your time with on this vlog. Alright, so wrapping up the session, one other hand to point out. A hand where I pick up pocket kings in under the gun +2. I make it 20, and both blinds end up calling me. The only callers I get. The flop comes out 5 of 5 deuce rainbow. Gets checked to me. I bet 25, and both blinds check call. No flush draw on this flop. Turn comes a 7, and it gets checked to me again. Now, one thing I know about both these guys, both like to slow play hands. When it gets checked to me here, I figure there's a decent chance that I could be getting trapped, but also a decent chance that I'm simply not going to get any more action out of some hands that I got action with on the flop. So I elect to check it back. River comes a 9, and it gets checked to me again. This time, I now assume that I'm definitely good, but don't think I'm going to get paid off by a lot of hands. And that was proven to be accurate because I bet a tiny wager of $20 and I get 2 folds. So maybe both of these guys had 3-4. I'm not sure. But a hand that felt like I should have won a lot more. And I'm not all that happy with the way that I played it, but do end up taking it down nonetheless. And then ended up booking a $366 win. And as I once told someone else, this game at the $5 blind level is largely about $300 wins.
Cool 8 News Now's Ben Deach is live at the rodeo with a look at what's coming up tonight. Ben?
It's always a staple in June every year here in Reno, the wildest, richest rodeo in the West, back for yet another year and 10 straight nights of action getting set to kick off tonight. All right, I've shown you guys around a lot of places in the city of Reno. How about the annual Reno Rodeo? That's what they got me shooting tonight. Some bull riding going on.